I've got to get this off my chest, and maybe you won't believe me. Hell, I wouldn't believe me. But what happened at Crystal Lake with my cousin Alex, it's something you should know. So listen up, because you don't really get how strong water can be until it sucks you down. And you have no idea what might be lurking down there, where you can't see. Just yesterday, everything was normal. My cousin Alex and I were hanging out as we always do on a Friday night. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. We need to talk. I could see Alex's stomach was twisted in knots. Emily came over to the house. She didn't even care that I was there. She wouldn't look at Alex when she said, "It's not you, it's me." Her voice flat, totally unconvincing. It looked like his heart was torn to pieces. Alex turned to me afterwards. He said, "I need to clear my mind. Can we go for a walk at Crystal Lake?" I knew how he felt. Somewhere quiet and peaceful could do him some good. Crystal Lake is a small, secluded area we used to go to as kids. I remembered my grandma's old tales about Shui, water ghosts, whenever we visited Crystal Lake as kids. I never took it seriously, but the stories suddenly popped into my head. Regardless, I thought the lake could help Alex find clarity, not realizing we'd find something entirely different. I agreed, though I made a mental note to stay on the shore. I never learned how to swim. Without a second thought, I drove us there. The night was pitch black, lit only by the crescent moon. The water was so still, it looked like a mirror. It looked eerily inviting, but I hung back. Alex took off his shoes and socks, rolled up his pant legs, and walked into the lake. He said the water was cold, but kind of nice, like a splash of cold water on a hot day. Out of nowhere, we heard a soft, melodic voice humming. It grew louder. I looked around and saw her swimming in the dim moonlight. It was surreal. She looked so much like Emily. It freaked me out a bit. Why would anyone swim in a cold lake in the middle of the night? "Hey, you look like you could use some company," she said to Alex, her voice as inviting as the song. Alex looked captivated. "You look familiar?" She finished his sentence, her smile showing off her dimples in a way that made her look even more mysterious. I get that a lot. Somehow, her words echoed in my mind. Was she trying to trap Alex? It was then that the stories about Shui flooded my mind. They were these old tales about water ghosts that my grandma had told me about as a child. "You be careful near water. These Shui are vicious," she'd warned me. They were once people who had drowned. Their souls were stuck in the water, trapped, unable to leave. The only way for these water ghosts to break free is to drown another person. And get this, the person they drowned would take their place, becoming the new Shui, stuck in the water until they found the next victim by appearing to look like someone you'd be attracted to. That cycle would continue for eternity. Was the lady in the water one of them? Nah, couldn't be. She looked too real, too nice, too human. "Hey, you can join us too. The water's perfect," she said, waving me over. Since I can't swim, I declined. At the same time, I felt that something was off. Call it my spidey senses. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it. "Hey Alex, I think we should go," I urged him. But Alex was already following her. Perhaps she reminded him of Emily. He stepped deeper into the water, probably not even thinking about those old ghost stories. She started swimming further out, away from the shore. "Come on, it's even better out here," she called with excitement. Her words were captivating. It seemed like she had cast a spell on Alex. Perhaps she actually had. Whatever she said, he obeyed. He took off his shirt and pants and started to walk into the lake, deeper and deeper. She looked back every few seconds to make sure that he was following. She was smiling bigger each time she looked back at him. Her skin was also looking paler each time. almost blue, under the dim moonlight. Perhaps it was the cold from the water, I thought to myself. When the water got up to his chin, I started to get really nervous. I called out to him, "Hey, come on back, Alex. We should go." The woman was now far out in the lake, almost melting into the dark water. I could still hear she said, "Come a little more. It's really nice here," she said sweetly, her eyes glued to Alex's. As Alex swam a little closer to her, I realized he was out so far he couldn't touch the bottom of the lake anymore. At that moment, her inviting smile changed to something twisted and wicked. It looked pure evil. That change made me tremble all over. Then in a flash, her eyes swelled and bulged out, looking almost ready to burst. Her long red hair now covered her face like a creepy curtain. Her once smooth skin now turned blue, scaly, and rotting. It looked as though it had been soaked in water for ages. Her cheeks looked like someone had sucked the air out of them. The sight was terrifying and lasted only a second. Then, just like that, she vanished, leaving not even a ripple behind. Almost instantly after, I saw Alex's head sink quickly into the water as if someone had dragged him from the bottom of the lake with huge force. The next thing I knew, Alex was kicking and waving his arms, trying really hard to get loose and breathe. I panicked. My mind was racing so fast it felt paralyzed, not knowing what to do. For a moment, it was like watching a nightmare unfold. I wanted to jump into the water to rescue him, but I can't swim. Then, I didn't know whether it was from fear or shock or what. My vision started to blur, as if the lake itself was knocking me out. Everything went black. I woke up disoriented, lying on the shore with no sign of Alex. I had no idea how much time had passed. I called out, "Alex, Alex!" All I could remember was that he was drowning. But the lake looked so calm, almost serene, as if nothing had happened. "I gotta get help," I said to myself. As I was pulling out my phone to call 911, I heard it again. The soft, eerie humming. My heart sank. I turned slowing towards the water. The tune was again coming from someone in the lake. The hum subtly shifted to a whisper. Another lady glided her head out of the water. She looked strikingly like my ex-girlfriend. "You look like you could use some company," she said with a big smile.
The following is a true story.
I've rarely shared the story of what happened after my grandfather died. Firstly, because it's deeply personal. Also, it delves into traditional Chinese beliefs about events after a person's death. We call it the return of the soul. In other words, ghost comes home. It's a concept that might seem foreign or even bizarre to those not familiar with our traditions. I lived with my grandpa and grandma growing up. My grandpa passed away when I was 11. At his funeral, Grandma and I dressed in the traditional white robes. It's very different from Western funeral, where everyone wears black. White is a symbol of purity in our traditions. The Chinese funeral homes also understand about the cycle of life and death, deeply rooted in Taoist beliefs. After all the visitors left, the funeral home operator gave us some very specific information about when Grandpa's ghost would come home. They said the soul would return to say one last farewell and to tie up any loose ends. They calculated the return based on the time and date of his death. I vividly remembered that he pulled us aside. His eyes were serious and deeply set. His white robe was very similar to what Grandma and I were wearing, but his robe tie was gold. "Both of you need to pay attention to this," he said, as he unfolded an ancient-looking chart. Scribbles and characters marked the paper, all converging to a single date and time. 49 days from my grandpa's passing at precisely 11:07 p.m. That's when his soul will make its return journey home. He then handed us a yellow talisman, inscribed with intricate red symbols. Tape this on the outside of your bedroom door on that night. This will keep away any evil spirits that might accompany him. The most important thing, he added, staring into our eyes as if to imprint his words, no matter what you hear or see, do not leave the room. Do you understand? We nodded, still in a daze from the funeral. It felt surreal, a blend of ancient beliefs seeping into our modern lives, but we couldn't ignore it, not when it came to honoring Grandpa's soul. After Grandpa's funeral, things were pretty normal. We were sad, of course, but nothing weird was happening. Grandma and I went on with our days. Then, the 49th day came. The night felt different, heavy, like something was about to happen. We put the yellow paper with red marks on our bedroom door, just like the man told us. We tried to watch TV and play some games to pass the time, but it was hard to focus. At 9 in the evening, we turned off all the lights, but left the few night lights still plugged in. Grandma fell asleep, but I stayed awake, staring at the clock. The moment the clock struck 11:07 p.m., the atmosphere in the room changed dramatically. Strong winds started to blow into our bedroom as if a hurricane was bursting through the windows. The strange thing was, it was wintertime. All the windows were sealed shut. The curtains thrashed violently, as if invisible hands were yanking at them. The blinds rattled so loudly, it drowned out all the sounds from the streets below. Grandma woke up. Her eyes snapped open. Her face twisted into an expression of horror and awe, mirroring my own. Almost at the same moment, we heard voices outside our room. I got out of my bed and pressed my ear to the door. I wanted to know what they were saying. All I could hear was some gibberish in both male and female tones. It sounded like a large crowd having a party. I couldn't tell whether they were arguing or having a good time. I could also see shadows flickering under the door. They were shifting and swirling as if a crowd of spirits were pacing back and forth. Then I could clearly see one of the shadows stood just outside of our bedroom door. I wanted to scream, but Grandma pulled me back to bed and covered me in blanket. Then, the apartment suddenly fell silent. Everything seemed normal again. I poked my head out of the blanket. The shadows were gone. The chatters had stopped. It was over. The next morning, we found the yellow talisman on the floor, as if it had been torn off the door. But what caught our eye was a small piece of paper with a red circle drawn on it, placed neatly on the kitchen table. Grandma looked at me, her eyes filling with tears, and whispered, "He's at peace now." We both knew, without saying it, that Grandpa had made his visit, saying his final goodbye before moving on to the afterlife.
The following is based on a true story.
When you're pregnant, they say you're like a magnet for ghosts, especially the restless ones. It's an age-old Chinese belief, steeped in tradition and bolstered by a ton of taboos. When Jenna, my best friend who was 7 months pregnant, had a late-night craving for Peking duck, I was hesitant. Cravings are cravings, but old traditions die hard, especially ones that speak of ghosts and unborn children. So, Jenna, her husband Ju Wei, myself, and our longtime friend Lei Ping found ourselves in a famous aged restaurant in the older part of Beijing. Lei Ping has what's known as yin eyes, a trait that's both a gift and a curse. They allow her to see what others can't. Essentially, she's our supernatural smoke detector. The restaurant was dimly lit, filled with antique decor and old paintings that seemed to follow you with their eyes. As we sat around the round table, covered in a red cloth signifying good luck, the atmosphere was initially cheerful. We ordered our meals, laughed, and talked about Jenna's upcoming baby shower. But then Lei Ping's face tightened. "Do you smell that? It smells like burnt flesh," she said, sniffing the air cautiously. We all took a whiff, got nothing. "The kitchen probably overcooked something," Ju Wei suggested, shrugging it off. Lei Ping wasn't convinced. She shook her head. "No, that's not it. Her eyes followed an unseen path from the restaurant's entrance to right beside Jenna. "Don't eat that!" she practically yelled, startling us. "We need to leave. Now." Though we were all mystified about what Lei Ping said, we didn't question her. I remembered the last time Lei Ping had a vision. She warned a friend who avoided a serious car accident the next day. So when Lei Ping insists, you listen. We paid hastily and left. As we walked away, Lei Ping took one last look back at the restaurant. Her face remained tense, as if she wasn't quite convinced that we'd left the danger behind, whatever danger that was. After driving for what seemed like an eternity, finally, Jenna broke the silence. "Lei Ping, you've got to tell us what you saw." Lei Ping sighed, her voice shaky. "It's between the Hungry Ghost Month and Halloween, the 2 months when the veil between the worlds is the thinnest. What I saw was a burnt spirit, its flesh dark and charred, standing right beside you. I couldn't see the face clearly, but I knew it was glaring at your belly, Jenna, as if it wanted to be reborn through your baby." We all went silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. That could have been a disaster, especially given Jenna's condition and the taboos surrounding pregnancy. "I think we dodged a bullet," Ju Wei finally said, breaking the silence. "You have no idea," Lei Ping replied, her voice tinged with a heaviness that said more than words ever could. After that night, Jenna became hyper-aware of any taboos related to her pregnancy. The craving for Peking duck had vanished, replaced by a newfound caution and a story none of us would ever forget.